Hi, my name is Steve Ann Smith, and I am your host for My Little Podcast. My Little Podcast is an interview-based podcast that explores the world of creatives through intimate and thoughtful conversations that seek to inspire and spark discovery through artistic curiosity. This show is for the community of artists, musicians, podcasters, journalists, authors, and content creators that find their purpose through art. We are all interconnected by our love for things we see beyond ourselves. This is my way of sharing our gifts with a larger audience in hopes of contributing to a future that sees life through joy, celebration, and prosperity. Allow us to share your story. Subscribe to My Little Podcast wherever you enjoy podcast listening. Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip-hop music and culture that happened throughout the week. 50 years of hip-hop. Big shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. And if you would like to learn how you can support the show and become a producer of this show, click the link in the description of this episode. We're not going to waste no time. We're going to get right to it. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, XXL Magazine, and in this case, Rap Caviar. Let's get right into the business. So DJ Clark Kent appeared on this series that you can find on the YouTube channel of the Notorious B.I.G. It's all about the making of, I believe, Life After Death, but in general, it's about Biggie and music and things of that nature. I hate saying things of that nature because I always said it, but I said it, so who cares? But maybe a week or so, or maybe even last week, I can't remember. Actually, it was last week. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. You already knew what I was going to say. But, last week, they had a little headline, a little controversy because of the whole, no flowers for Easy Mo B and people kind of claiming production as actually his or just not mentioning him, which seemed weird. Well, now this series that is not really concentrated on these outside takes has another hot take, and this time it's from DJ Clark Kent. Now, if you don't know who that is, I would say Google DJ Clark Kent. No, Google DJ Clark Kent's production credits and then come back, because there are people who will write an opinion off because they don't know the person who's talking. Once you know him, you should know that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to hip hop, because he has contributed to hip hop in so many different ways, Biggie being one, Jay-Z being another, and so on and so forth. But during his interview with Angie Martinez, he had some controversial things to say about Dr. Dre's classic album, The Chronic. And here's what he said, essentially, and I quote, "If you look at every album that you think is a classic album, like the real classics, the NWA's, Ice Cube's, Snoop Dogg's first album, A Tribe Called Quest joint, Slick Rick's album, Chronic, I can't even put The Chronic before I put Snoop Dogg's album. Snoop Dogg's album is better than The Chronic. It definitely is. That's not even a question. What I'm saying is, if you take a second and listen to all those albums, Reasonable Doubt, Life After Death, Ready to Die, they're all the same album. All these albums do the same thing. They begin, they hold you in the middle, they hug you, and then they end. That's what classic albums do. But you got to have great songs that make things happen. If you don't, you'll get one song that doesn't hit properly. You done took yourself out of the classic thing, because if you can skip, you ain't got a classic. That's why I won't say, not me, DJ Clark Kent, say The Chronic is a classic, because I can skip RBX. Wow, coming for RBX. So he said a number of things. He made a number of great points, but I got a counterpoint. I believe a classic album can have skips. Now, you can't skip half the album. You can't even skip a quarter of the album. Now, we're talking about classics, obviously stand the test of time. They don't get whack over time. They shouldn't, if you understand the context in which it was released and why it was so big at the time. But to his point, and the Snoop thing is not the first time I heard somebody say that, just to be honest, that Snoop's debut is better. And in some ways, maybe it is. But I disagree with him. The Chronic is without a doubt a classic. I skip One Time for Your Mind on Illmatic. Sometimes I skip Halftime. Mainly because I felt like Halftime just felt like it was so different. Like it was a much, I don't know, like I won't say a hungrier Nas or whack, but it was just a different level of production compared to everything else. So it almost sounded like a demo, right? In comparison, like, yo, this is when he was trying to get on, but this is when, New York State of Mind is when he's established. I skip songs on most classics. It's probably really rare for me to find an album that I like that has every song that I like so much that I never skip. Reasonable Doubt, I skip. Doggy Style, there's a number of records I skip. Even back then, I did. So he's wrong on that. Now, to make the point for The Chronic, well, The Chronic has some timeless music, and we're not just talking about Nothing But a G thing, right? Let Me Ride is crazy. Stranded on Death Row is crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are records on there that are quote unquote perfect. There are a number of them. And there's no way that a record led by RBX will make me say, well, it's not a classic, because there's so much. What's on there that's great is so great that you can have one or two duds on this album and it won't put a dent in what I think about it as a classic. So DJ Clark Kent obviously is entitled to his opinion, but he's wrong. He's just wrong. Even my favorite album of all time, Death Certificate, I think it's back here somewhere, but I don't feel like looking for it. Even with that album, an album that I know, this is my favorite album of all time, there is one record that I always say, just get to the next record that I like. Ready to Die. Let's get friend of mine. Let's just get past this. Back then, I kind of liked it. Now it's like, whatever. So again, I don't feel like he is right. I feel like he's entitled to his opinion, but I think we shouldn't look at classics in that way as, well, if I can't skip anything, or if I have to skip, then it's not a classic. That's not true. That's just not true. Like, I don't believe you. You need more people. Okay? DJ Clark Kent, again, he's certified in the game. Don't try to come for him. It's just his opinion. Whatever. I wonder what other classic albums he doesn't think is a classic. I'd be interested to see a list. He might as well just set the world on fire and just keep going, right? Here's my top 10 classic albums are not a classic album. At number one, Pay It in Full. Why not? But damn sure didn't mention Rakim when he was talking about all those classic albums, so it makes me wonder. Recently, I solicited opinions of those on the internet or internets. Shout out to you know. But as you know, if you've been following this podcast, and if you don't know, I tend to listen to a lot of hip hop throughout the year. Not only albums that I'm anticipating on a personal level, but albums that may have a little conversation around them on social media. Albums of guys I see names pop up here and there, news stories, and best so far and stuff like that. Because you have to keep your ears to the street, right? And I remember hearing about this dude, Mickey Diamond, a while back. And no shade towards anybody who was posting this a while ago. But there are particular hip hop heads that I follow that tend to have a specific type of taste. And again, this is not no shade to one person, because I don't look at one person then make a whole story about it. This is the totality of, did I say that right? Whatever. Of most of the hip hop heads who post a lot about the music they like on my timelines. So I've seen more than once people talk about Mickey Diamond. So it's kind of been like a little bit of a dry spell in between albums. Obviously, I have albums I'm listening to on heavy rotation, but I always try to check to see what's new. And so I saw this album. First of all, a big shout out to Speak Your Clout podcast. Check them out. So I decided to ask a couple of people, and they were one of them, about, Mickey Diamond. I've seen a lot of stuff said about him. What should I listen to? Right. So I was given a list. And as I was looking at that list and I went into Apple Music, I noticed he had a new project out called Nobody Bleeds Like Flair. And it's pink, and it has like a illustration of Ric Flair on the cover when he was giving one of his classic promos on wrestling. I think WCW at the time, or AMA, one of them joints, I don't know. But I was like, well, you know what? Before I go back, let me just hear what he has now, because I'm thinking, sometimes you go back to somebody's first project and maybe they're not as polished as they are now with their new music, right? Maybe they've been able to get better production, or they're better with their flow, or maybe the sound quality is better, whatever. So I figured, well, let me just hear the latest project is right here before I go back. And I will say this, even before I started asking about him, I was a little hesitant, because I'm the type of person, I can't listen to projects from multiple rappers who typically rap about the same things, pick the same kind of beats, had the same things. At some point, I'm just going to pick the best of that group, and I'm going to stick to that person. So when you hear, and if you don't know about Mickey Diamond, when you hear me talking about him, well, what category does he fall under? Well, he falls right under that Griselda wing, right? Of the Griseldas and Benny the Butcher, Conway the Machine, West Side Gun. He's even in that Rock Marcy lane and Stove God's lane and El Camino and all the, like, just all those cats from that same boom bap, crime lord rapping, typically bars lane. So I'm thinking, okay, I may think it's cool, or I may dislike it and just move on and not really even check out the catalog. So I press play, and the album or the project is 11 songs, 35 minutes in total. Now, y'all know me, keep that album short, and if you can keep the time at a sweet spot, you got my attention. And I will say, because I did all of that to build up to this, I will say, I think this is one of the best projects of the year. Now, when I say that, I don't mean top 5. No, not at all. Because what's being done on this project isn't that unique, right? Wrestling themes, that's Griselda all day. We've already heard that. They've already milked that whole subject and theme, and they continue to do so. But what I liked about it was the production and how this project was put together. And I feel like Mickey Diamond is not somebody who I can't put him lyrically on the same level as Benny or Conway, but I think he's pretty dope for what he does, right? And what he does is not draw or color outside the lines. This project is perfectly crafted, in my opinion. If you are looking for boom bap, if you are looking for somebody maybe new, somebody you never heard of, and he's a person you've never heard of, if you like the nostalgia, like myself, of hearing, wrestling promos and if you like Ric Flair, right? If that brings you nostalgia, I think this project does a perfect job of sticking to its theme and not in a superficial way. Because I'll tell you like this, all those rappers I named and all those groups, sometimes they'll name their songs something and you can't find the connection, right? They'll say like, yo, this record's called Mr. Fuji. And you listen and all you hear is coke raps and shotgun blasts and who they killed and who they about to kill and all of that. And by the end, you're like, well, why they call it Mr. Fuji? And he just did. And it doesn't make any sense. Whereas this sticks to the theme pretty much. And I think that's what I enjoyed about it. It's sort of a concept album without being so dedicated to the concept that everything has to be overly attached to said concept. It's just a concept, a theme that they keep going throughout the project, production-wise, somewhat lyrically, and it just goes. His voice is perfect. He sounds like a rapper, right? If you were in a cipher with him, you wouldn't think he was whack. You wouldn't think he's the greatest ever, but you would respect him. And that's what I like about it. I think the music is respectable in a lot of ways. For me, not having heard any of his projects, it wasn't as predictable as I thought it would be. If you want an example of what it is, and obviously not everybody watching or listening has heard everything. So maybe I'm putting you onto something you didn't know. But if you think about Ransom and producer Nicholas Craven, when they did their director's cut series and they did all these themes, just like that, right? Just like that. Oh, this joint is called Halloween. It's tied into the movies. A lot of samples from the movie, right? A lot of references from Ransom that you can take, or you can go and watch Halloween movies and get it, or just horror in general. Now, I will say Mickey Diamond doesn't go that far, but he does enough. And if you're talking about 11 songs at 35 minutes per listen, and the beats are dope, and the concept is dope, I mean, all I could do is recommend it to those who like boom bap. If you are like me, how I was before I pressed play, and you like, hey, I like Benny and I like Conway, and Conway just released 2 projects this year, and Benny got stuff on the way, I'm just going to stick to them. I'm not mad at you. But if you got the time, I think you should check out Mickey Diamond's project. What is it? Nosebleed? Like, nobody bleeds. Nosebleed. Nobody bleeds like Flair. Pretty dope project. And lastly, 50 years of hip hop, right? 50 years of hip hop. We didn't need 50 years of hip hop for us to debate lists, because it's been happening for a while. Okay. But 50 years of hip hop, we know the list will not end until this year is over, or maybe at least till hip hop's actual birthday hits, which is in August. But we already know the lists are coming. I'm actually starting to think about doing a list myself, but we'll see. But Rap Caviar, which I believe is a music streaming service and website and all that good stuff, decided to put out 50 greatest hip hop beats of all time, a list to commemorate 50 years of hip hop. And it is the talk of the week or the day, depending on if you're a grown person who's like, man, I ain't got no time to be arguing. And it's not a bad list, but it kind of is. Let's go through the list first. Let's start with number one. At number one, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Still Dre. Remember, top 50 greatest hip hop beats of all time. Number two, Mobb Deep, Shook Ones Part 2. Number three, The Clips, Grinding. Number four, The Notorious B.I.G., Who Shot Ya. Number five, Lil Wayne, Millie. Number six, Kanye West, Power. Number seven, Puff Daddy and the Family, It's All About the Benjamins remix. That's the one that includes Biggie at the end. Number eight, Mike Jones featuring Paul Wall and Slim Thug, Still Tippin'. Number nine, Travis Scott featuring Drake, Sicko Mode. And number 10, Missy Elliott, Get Your Freak On. Now, I'm not going to go through and tell you who produced every track because some are self-explanatory, right? Like Dr. Dre and Kanye West, right? Who are producers who are rapping. And then there are other people who did the beats for these other songs. All of these beats are dope. They are. But there's just one glaring omission for 50 greatest hip hop beats of all time, top 10, saying that DJ Premier and RZA were not good enough to make the top 10. I don't care about the other 40. RZA and Premier were not good enough to make the top 10? Are you kidding me? Let's start with Premier. Now, and don't get me wrong, there are other producers where you're like, wow, OP Rock? Not in the top 10? But let's start with Premier. Premier not only has some of the greatest beats of all time that he's produced for his group, Gang Starr, but he's also produced some of the greatest beats of all time as it relates to Nas, Jay-Z, Biggie. We could keep going. He's produced for a lot of people, right? Now, not every beat he's made is the greatest beat of all time. But what I got to think about is when you look at the list of people, let me put my phone in my pocket, man, because I need to use both hands with the gestures, okay? Like I need to, you know what I'm saying? If you're listening in audio form, I'm using my hands to gesture. But I just do it. I don't understand when you look at all these beats that are on this top 10 list. Again, none of these beats are whack to me at all. They belong on the top 50 list somewhere. But top 10, I don't know, because when I look at this top 10, what it says to me is, oh, well, y'all think that beat is Dre's best beat? That beat is dope. But is that Dre's best beat? I don't think so. When I look at these songs on this list, y'all think that's Kanye's best beat ever? Power, ever. Is that the best beat on the album Graduation? Is it? Could be. When I look at this list, the top 10 that is, it becomes pretty clear that this is more about popularity than everything. Now, when I say popularity, I'm not talking about sales, because Shook Ones is pretty high. And if it was about sales and singles, that wouldn't be that. I think it's about popularity as far as iconic beats that have stood the test of time that you always hear. Shook Ones, Shook Ones, that beat will not go away. That beat might as well be a meme. Prodigy's lyrics are like a meme. You can put in the gift search and find like Prodigy and the Whip for Shook Ones in the list. Like the beat in the song is one of the greatest of all times on a whole other level, like on a popularity level, right? And Travis Scott, Sicko Mode, now that beat is crazy, right? That switch up and everything. But which I believe was produced by Hit Boy. I think so. But regardless, Sicko Mode. So you can't find a place for New York State of Mind and put Mass Appeal. Forget everything in Mass Appeal, What else? Come Clean. See, that to me, having Sicko Mode in the top 10, having Get Your Freak On in the top 10 just says we have to cover all of hip hop. East Coast, West Coast, down south, underground, commercial, or pop, or whatever way you want to characterize it. It can't just be 90s. It can't just be 2000s, right? That top 10 checks all those boxes, and it makes me feel like that was the agenda. Now, if we're just looking at dope beat and that beat's impact, some of those you could definitely argue they should be there, right? Benjamin's isn't the best beat I've heard out of that Bad Boy camp, not by a long shot, but that song and its popularity, and it's infectious in a lot of ways. But so is Cream from Wu-Tang Clan. How is Cream not on this list? How? When I first heard Cream, I didn't understand that at the time. I didn't know beats like this could be made. It almost was like, it's like offbeat. It's weird. It's dark. It's kind of eerie. I've never heard anything like this before. It's dope. A beat like Come Clean, it's like, is that Water Drops? I don't understand this track. Something about it is next level. See, to me, they have the same impact. It's just that maybe Cream is more popular and Come Clean, bars, I think, is more of a underground, so to speak, popularity thing. But at the time of release, just like Sicko Mode, how young cats feel about hearing that Sicko Mode beat and song and feeling like, this beat is crazy. At the time, that's what Come Clean was. All of hip hop was talking about it. All of hip hop. When cats heard Cream, everybody was talking about it. Mass Appeal got that same appeal that Shook Ones has, right? That's another record that just like, this is somehow standing out when it comes to Gangstar's catalog, considering all the dope beats Premier has produced for the group. Triumph. That Triumph beat? You telling me this don't belong in the top 10? I digress. What I'm saying is when it comes to these lists, like I say all the time, obviously it's subjective, but also there's a motive. Also, publications know, as you should know, content creators, that even if the attention is negative, you're going to get a lot of hits on that list, bars. Because people who agree with it probably want to see the rest of the 50. People who disagree with it want to investigate how and why the hell did you do what you did. But everybody's clicking. Everybody's hashtag. Everybody's talking about it. I'm talking about it. So in that way, they get more exposure, they get more audience. Some people will stick around, will become fans of the site, because you know what happens? They click on that, then they start to look at what else is there. And then they might see something they like, and then they may stick around, and voila. Now you have new subscribers, new fans, new visitors, new followers, and all that good stuff. So I'm not discrediting the list if a committee of individuals who love hip hop came together and made this list, but there's certain consistencies in this list that aren't open to the human eye, but you just gotta look a little deeper without reading into it and making up something just to say, I see what they did there. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Vegas World INC. And please know that this podcast is available in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. And if you listen to this podcast, or you've been listening for years and you wanted to see a video version, you want to see me say these words I'm saying, visit YouTube and search Hip Hop Now Podcast. Hit subscribe. If you like the content, hit the like button. If you have a comment, leave a comment. Was The Chronic a classic album? You tell me. Do you disagree with that top 10 greatest beats of all time? Let me know it in the comment section. I read all the comments. I typically respond. And I appreciate you sharing this with people who enjoy this kind of hip hop content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace. Sometimes I'm a critic. Who cares?